The morning of January 11, 2023, broke with an unusual chill in Briarwood Heights, a serene and picturesque town nestled outside Charleston, South Carolina. The town, known for its sprawling oaks and historic homes, seemed untouched by the chaos of the outside world. But that illusion was shattered and the Harrington residence became the center of a chilling mystery. At 7:45 a.m., a frantic 911 call from the Harrington home jolted the quiet streets. Evelyn Harrington, a pillar of the community, reported finding her husband, Michael, unconscious in the family's private library. The responding officers arrived to find a scene that defied the peaceful reputation of Briarwood Heights. Michael Harrington, a respected attorney, was slumped over his polished mahogany desk. His lifeless body bore a single, gruesome wound to the back of his head, suggesting an act of violence far removed from the tranquility of his everyday life. Detectives combed the room, searching for any clue that could explain the tragedy. The windows were intact, the doors locked, and nothing appeared stolen. Yet, amid the seeming order, one item stood out, a black smartphone, unfamiliar to Evelyn and placed conspicuously near Michael's hand. Its presence would later unravel secrets that no one in Briarwood Heights could have imagined. Michael Harrington was the embodiment of reliability and success. At 48, he had built a legal career admired by colleagues and clients alike. Known for his unwavering integrity, Michael had fought tirelessly for those in need, earning the nickname, the town's conscience. But behind his professional success lay a man deeply devoted to his family. As a husband and father, Michael believed in providing the best for his wife, Evelyn, and their two children, Ethan and Claire. He worked long hours to ensure their comfort, often sacrificing personal time. Despite his efforts, there were cracks in his seemingly perfect life. Recently, Michael had noticed Evelyn withdrawing, her once vibrant energy replaced by a quiet distance. Conversations became shorter, her laughter less frequent. He had brushed it off as stress, until now. Michael's friends would later describe him as a man with an unwavering moral compass, but perhaps too focused on his work to notice the shadows gathering in his home. Those shadows would soon prove deadly. At 42, Evelyn Harrington was a picture of grace and composure. Known throughout Briarwood Heights for her involvement in charity work and community events, she was the quintessential Southern wife, poised, polite, and endlessly supportive. Yet beneath her polished exterior, Evelyn was suffocating. After 2 decades of marriage, Evelyn felt trapped in a life defined by expectations she could no longer meet. The excitement she once shared with Michael had faded into routine. Her days revolved around managing the household, attending social gatherings, and volunteering. She adored her children but often felt invisible in her own home, her identity swallowed by the roles she was expected to play. Evelyn's isolation grew unbearable in the fall of 2022. Late at night, when the house was quiet, she would sit alone with her laptop, venturing into online chat rooms. It was there, among strangers, that she felt the first spark of freedom she'd experienced in years. At first, the conversations were harmless, idle chatter about books, music, and mundane frustrations. But one name soon stood out among the rest, Ryan Caldwell. As the sun climbed higher on that January morning, the Harrington home swarmed with police, medical examiners, and forensic investigators. The phone found near Michael's body was bagged and sent to the station for analysis. Its contents, the detectives suspected, might hold the key to understanding what happened in the library. Evelyn, clad in a robe and visibly shaken, was questioned by Detective Daniel Grayson, a seasoned investigator with a knack for sensing when a story didn't add up. Evelyn recounted the previous night. She had gone to bed early, exhausted from preparations for the upcoming charity gala at Magnolia Hall. Michael had stayed up late, as he often did, working on a case. She had no idea anything was amiss until she found him that morning. Despite her composed demeanor, there was a nervous energy in Evelyn's voice, a subtle hesitation that didn't escape Grayson's notice. He made a mental note to dig deeper into her relationship with Michael. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than a simple break-in gone wrong, as Evelyn initially suggested. As the investigation unfolded, the people of Briarwood Heights were left in stunned disbelief. How could such violence touch a family so seemingly perfect? And what role did the enigmatic black phone play in the events leading up to Michael's death? Unbeknownst to the town, the phone contained a Pandora's box of secrets, secrets that would soon reveal the cracks in the Harringtons' perfect facade and point the investigation toward a truth darker than anyone could have anticipated. The seeds of Evelyn Harrington's secret life were sown in the unlikeliest of places, a quiet corner of her living room, late at night, illuminated only by the soft glow of her laptop. It was October 2022, and Evelyn, restless and yearning for something she couldn't quite name, stumbled upon an online chat room. At first, it felt innocent, almost therapeutic. There, she could shed the weight of her identity as a wife and mother and simply be herself, a woman searching for connection. Evelyn told herself it was harmless. The conversations with strangers were fleeting and meaningless, a way to fill the void left by years of monotony. But one username caught her attention, Ryan C85. His messages stood out, not because they were flashy or seductive, but because they were genuine, raw, and laced with humor. They spoke of a life so different from hers, a life untethered by schedules and expectations. And Evelyn, trapped in the predictable rhythm of Briarwood Heights, found herself drawn to him. Ryan Caldwell was everything Michael Harrington was not. At 35, he lived in Columbia, South Carolina, juggling 2 jobs, a fitness trainer by day and an aspiring musician by night. His life was a mess of unpaid bills and unfulfilled dreams, but Ryan carried himself with a charisma that masked his struggles. His messages to Evelyn were laced with tales of late-night gigs, impulsive road trips, and the intoxicating freedom of a life lived without boundaries. For Ryan, the idea of Evelyn, a composed, elegant woman from a wealthy family, was irresistible. She represented stability, something he had never truly experienced. But what drew him most was the subtle vulnerability in her words, the way she seemed to ache for a life she couldn't have. To Ryan, she was a puzzle, and solving her meant unlocking a life far removed from his own chaos. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn and Ryan's conversations deepened. What started as light banter quickly morphed into something more intimate. Evelyn shared stories about her family, her children, her years of feeling invisible in her own home. Ryan responded with his own confessions, his failures, his fears, and his longing for something more meaningful. By November 2022, Evelyn's nights were consumed by their conversations. She waited eagerly for the notification that Ryan was online, her heart racing with each new message. Their relationship became her escape, a lifeline that pulled her away from the suffocating routines of her daily life. But as their connection grew, so did the danger. It was Ryan who first suggested meeting in person. Evelyn hesitated. The idea thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. She knew what it meant, crossing a line she could never return from. Yet, the allure of being seen, truly seen, by someone who made her feel alive was too powerful to resist. On a crisp November afternoon, Evelyn made the hour-long drive to Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, to meet Ryan at a small cafe by the water, Riverfront Cafe. She arrived early, her nerves heightened by the thrill of what she was about to do. When Ryan walked in, his easy smile and confident stride made her feel like the world had stopped spinning. Their conversation flowed effortlessly. Ryan was charming, attentive, and quick-witted, making Evelyn laugh in a way she hadn't in years. For the first time in a long while, she felt desired, not as a wife or a mother, but as a woman. And when Ryan's hand brushed hers across the table, a spark ignited that would soon consume them both. That day marked the beginning of something Evelyn couldn't control. She drove home with a mixture of guilt and exhilaration, rehearsing explanations in her mind should Michael ask where she had been. But he didn't. Michael, ever consumed by work, barely noticed her absence, a fact that both relieved and saddened her. The weeks after their first meeting were a whirlwind of stolen moments and secret rendezvous. Evelyn found reasons to slip away to Colombia under the guise of charity work or errands. Each meeting with Ryan felt like an escape, a reprieve from the life she no longer wanted. But what began as a thrilling adventure soon took a darker turn. Ryan's messages became more frequent, his tone more demanding. He wanted to see her more often, to be part of her life in a way that Evelyn knew was impossible. At first, his intensity was flattering, proof of his passion for her. But as the weeks turned into months, Ryan's demands began to feel suffocating. He started questioning her commitments to her family, accusing her of prioritizing them over him. "You don't belong in that house," he texted one night. "You belong with me." Evelyn tried to reassure him, but her words only seemed to fuel his frustration. Ryan wanted more than stolen afternoons and fleeting texts. He wanted all of her. By December 2022, Evelyn was living a double life. At home, she maintained the facade of the devoted wife and mother, attending holiday events and decorating the house with Ethan and Claire. But every smile she gave Michael was tinged with guilt. In her heart, she knew she was deceiving him. Yet the pull of Ryan's world was too strong to resist. Her lies grew more elaborate. She invented trips, fabricated meetings, and created excuses to explain her absences. She told herself she had everything under control, that she could keep her two lives separate. But cracks were beginning to show. Evelyn's mood swings became more pronounced, her patience with her children thinner. And Michael, though preoccupied with work, started noticing her distracted demeanor. On Christmas Eve, Evelyn and Ryan met for what would be their most intense encounter yet. At a secluded motel outside Colombia, Ryan confessed the depth of his feelings. "You're my world now," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "I can't share you anymore." Evelyn froze. For the first time, she saw not just the passion in Ryan's eyes but also the possessiveness. He spoke of a future where it was just the two of them, free from the constraints of her family. Evelyn laughed nervously, brushing off his words, but the seed had been planted. Ryan didn't just want her, he wanted her to leave everything behind. As she drove back to Briarwood Heights that night, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that her life was spiraling out of control. The thrill that had once excited her now felt like a weight dragging her into uncharted waters. She resolved to pull back, to find a way to end things with Ryan without destroying her family. But Ryan had no intention of letting her go. Unbeknownst to Evelyn, the game she thought she was playing was no longer in her control. The stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined, and the consequences of her choices were about to unfold in ways she couldn't predict. By the time the new year arrived, the delicate threads holding Evelyn Harrington's double life together had begun to unravel. What had started as a thrilling escape had become a suffocating web of lies and deceit. Ryan Caldwell was no longer content with stolen moments and whispered promises. He wanted more of Evelyn, more of her life, and most dangerously, more control. Michael Harrington had always prided himself on his ability to see through deception. As a seasoned attorney, he had built a career on uncovering the truth. Yet, when it came to his own marriage, he had been blind, or perhaps too trusting. But even Michael could not ignore the growing distance in Evelyn's demeanor. She was no longer the poised and attentive partner he had known. Her once reliable presence at family dinners was marked by distracted silences and fabricated excuses for late nights away. In December 2022, Michael decided to act. Quietly, he hired a private investigator, Daniel Grayson, a former police detective known for his discretion and thoroughness. Michael didn't want a confrontation without evidence, he needed proof, cold and undeniable. Grayson quickly uncovered what Michael feared most: Evelyn was having an affair. The investigator provided detailed reports, photos, and text message records that painted a clear picture of Evelyn's relationship with Ryan Caldwell. Michael was devastated but resolved. He had spent years building a life of stability and respectability, and he wouldn't allow it to crumble without a fight. On January 8, 2023, Michael told Grayson that he intended to confront Evelyn at the upcoming charity gala at the Magnolia Hall. The event, a cornerstone of Briarwood Heights society, was the perfect stage for Michael to unmask Evelyn's betrayal, not just to her but to the entire community. Meanwhile, Ryan Caldwell's obsession with Evelyn was reaching a fever pitch. Her hesitations, her half-hearted promises to leave her family, all fed his insecurities. He had given her everything, his time, his passion, his heart, and yet, she refused to take the final step. To Ryan, her loyalty to Michael was an insult, a reminder that he would always come second to a man he considered unworthy of her. On the night of January 9, Ryan confronted Evelyn during one of their clandestine meetings. "How much longer are you going to lie to yourself?" he demanded, his voice trembling with frustration. "Do you really think you can keep playing both sides forever?" Evelyn tried to calm him, insisting she needed more time. But Ryan wasn't satisfied. He pressed her for details about Michael, his schedule, his habits, anything that would give Ryan an edge. Evelyn, overwhelmed and desperate to pacify him, revealed more than she intended. She mentioned Michael's late nights in the library, his meticulous routines, and his plan to attend the charity gala. Ryan listened intently, his mind working at a dangerous speed. January 10, 2023, began like any other day in the Harrington household. Evelyn busied herself with final preparations for the gala, while Michael spent the morning in his office, reviewing case files. Their interactions were cordial but distant, each avoiding the unspoken tension simmering beneath the surface. As night fell, Michael informed Evelyn he would work late in the library, a common occurrence she thought nothing of. He seemed calm, even composed, a stark contrast to her own restless energy. At 9:30 p.m., Evelyn kissed her children goodnight and retired to the master bedroom. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts racing between Ryan's demands and the inevitability of Michael discovering the truth. At 10:15 p.m., the tranquility of the Harrington home was shattered. Michael sat at his desk, reviewing the investigator's final report, when he heard the faint creak of a floorboard behind him. Before he could turn, a heavy object struck the back of his head. He slumped forward, blood pooling on the polished wood surface. The assailant stood over him, breathing heavily, before placing a single, damning object on the desk, a black smartphone. The following morning, Evelyn woke to an eerie silence. The house felt heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves knew what had transpired. She called out for Michael but received no answer. Growing anxious, she made her way to the library. The sight that greeted her would haunt her forever. Michael's lifeless body was slumped over the desk, his face pale and still. Evelyn let out a piercing scream, her knees buckling beneath her. The black smartphone near his hand seemed to mock her, its presence both foreign and familiar. Trembling, Evelyn dialed 911, her voice frantic and barely coherent. Within minutes, the Harrington home was swarmed by police and paramedics. Detective Daniel Grayson arrived on the scene, his sharp eyes immediately noting the inconsistencies. There were no signs of forced entry, no valuables missing, this was no random act of violence. The black smartphone, carefully bagged as evidence, was the first clue that this was personal. As detectives pieced together the scene, a chilling pattern began to emerge. The phone contained a series of text messages exchanged between Evelyn and Ryan, messages filled with desperation, passion, and veiled threats. Phrases like, "He doesn't deserve you," and "We'll find a way to be together," stood out, casting a dark shadow over Evelyn's already fragile alibi. When questioned, Evelyn claimed ignorance. She insisted the phone wasn't hers, that it must have been planted. But her trembling hands and darting eyes betrayed her. Grayson wasn't convinced. He knew Evelyn was hiding something, whether it was guilt or fear, he couldn't yet determine. Unbeknownst to Evelyn, Ryan's erratic behavior in the days leading up to the murder had drawn attention. Surveillance footage from a gas station near the Harrington home showed Ryan purchasing gloves and duct tape the night of January 10. When confronted by detectives, Ryan was confident, even smug. He denied any involvement, insisting he had been home all night. But as the evidence mounted, his story began to crack. The murder of Michael Harrington was no longer just a crime, it was a revelation of secrets long buried. As the investigation deepened, Evelyn and Ryan's lies would unravel, exposing a truth darker than anyone in Briarwood Heights could have imagined. But the question remained, was Evelyn an innocent victim caught in Ryan's obsession, or had she played a far more sinister role in the tragedy that destroyed her family? The answers would soon come to light, but not before tearing apart the fragile facade of the Harringtons' perfect life. The murder of Michael Harrington sent shockwaves through Briarwood Heights. For a town that thrived on its sense of order and decency, the gruesome discovery shattered its idyllic image. Behind the white picket fences and historic mansions, whispers of betrayal, obsession, and murder began to circulate. The Harrington family, once a model of respectability, now stood at the center of a storm that threatened to expose their darkest secrets. Detective Daniel Grayson, with years of experience untangling lies, led the investigation. From the moment he stepped into the Harrington library, he knew this was no ordinary crime. The meticulous staging of the scene, coupled with the mysterious black smartphone, pointed to something far more calculated. Grayson's instincts told him that this murder was personal, an act born of passion and desperation. In the days following the murder, Evelyn Harrington became the focus of intense police scrutiny. During her initial interviews, she appeared distraught, her voice trembling as she recounted the events of that fateful night. Evelyn claimed she had gone to bed early, unaware of any danger, and had discovered Michael's body the next morning. But Grayson wasn't convinced. There was something too rehearsed about her responses, a calculated hesitation that made him suspect she wasn't telling the whole truth. As detectives combed through the Harrington home, they discovered subtle signs of Evelyn's double life. Hidden in her personal belongings were receipts for trips to Colombia, where Ryan Caldwell lived. Her laptop revealed a trail of emails and messages exchanged with Ryan, filled with expressions of longing, frustration, and ultimately, veiled anger. Evelyn's pristine image as a devoted wife and mother was beginning to crumble. But it was the black smartphone that proved to be the most damning piece of evidence. Forensic analysis uncovered text messages between Evelyn and Ryan that painted a picture of a relationship spiraling out of control. Ryan's messages were possessive, almost threatening, while Evelyn's responses oscillated between attempts to reassure him and her own expressions of fear and doubt. One message stood out, "He'll never let me go. I don't know what to do anymore." When confronted with the phone's contents, Evelyn broke down. She admitted to the affair but vehemently denied any involvement in Michael's death. "I wanted to end it," she sobbed, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the interrogation table. "I told Ryan it was over. I never wanted this." While Evelyn's alibi began to falter, attention shifted to Ryan Caldwell. Grayson wasted no time bringing him in for questioning. Ryan, ever the performer, entered the interrogation room with an air of confidence. He denied any involvement in the murder, portraying himself as a victim of Evelyn's manipulations. "She told me she was trapped," he said, his voice steady but tinged with bitterness. "I was just trying to help her find a way out." Grayson wasn't buying it. The evidence against Ryan was mounting. Surveillance footage placed him near the Harrington home on the night of the murder, and his purchase of gloves and duct tape from a gas station was hard to explain away. But it was Ryan's behavior during questioning that raised the most alarm. His composure cracked when pressed about his whereabouts, revealing flashes of anger and defensiveness. Grayson could see it, the possessiveness that Evelyn had described, the obsession that had likely driven him to take matters into his own hands. Yet, Ryan wasn't going down alone. In a desperate attempt to deflect blame, he accused Evelyn of orchestrating the entire scheme. She hated him, Ryan claimed, leaning forward in his chair. She wanted him gone, but she didn't have the guts to do it herself. She used me. Ryan's accusations led detectives to re-evaluate Evelyn's role in the murder. Was she truly an innocent victim caught in Ryan's obsession, or had she manipulated him into carrying out her darkest desires? The answer lay in the couple's digital trail. Emails recovered from Evelyn's laptop revealed a series of chilling exchanges. In one thread, Evelyn expressed frustration over Michael's control, writing, "I feel like I'm drowning. I need to breathe again." Ryan's response was disturbingly direct, "Say the word, and I'll take care of it." Evelyn's reply, though less explicit, hinted at desperation, "I just want it all to stop." These messages were not a smoking gun, but they painted a portrait of a woman pushed to the edge, tangled in a dangerous game she could no longer control. Grayson began to see the murder not as a singular act of violence but as the culmination of a toxic and volatile partnership. Just as the investigation seemed to be reaching a stalemate, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Unbeknownst to Evelyn or anyone else, Michael Harrington had installed a hidden camera in his library weeks before his death. Investigators recovered the footage from a cloud storage backup, and what it revealed changed the course of the case. The footage, time-stamped at 10:12 p.m. on January 10, showed a figure entering the library. The person's face was obscured by a hood, but their build and movements unmistakably matched Ryan Caldwell. As the figure approached Michael from behind, they raised a blunt object, later identified as a heavy paperweight, and delivered a fatal blow. The video ended abruptly, but it was enough. Ryan's presence at the scene was undeniable, and the brutality of his actions left little room for doubt. Grayson knew they had their killer, but the footage also raised new questions. Had Ryan acted alone, or had Evelyn's words and actions pushed him to commit the unthinkable? Faced with the mounting evidence, Evelyn was brought in for a final round of questioning. This time, her composure shattered completely. Through tears, she admitted to confiding in Ryan about her struggles with Michael but insisted she had never intended for things to escalate to violence. "I was scared," she cried. "I thought he understood that I didn't mean it, that it was just words." But Grayson wasn't convinced. Evelyn's emails, her messages, her decision to continue the affair despite knowing Ryan's instability, all pointed to a woman who had played a dangerous game and lost. As the investigation concluded, both Evelyn and Ryan were charged, Ryan with first-degree murder and Evelyn with conspiracy. Their trials would soon become the talk of Briarwood Heights, drawing national attention to a story of love, betrayal, and deadly obsession. But even as the pieces fell into place, one question lingered: was Evelyn truly a victim of Ryan's obsession, or had she been the mastermind all along? The answer, like so many truths in Briarwood Heights, lay somewhere in the shadows. The trials of Evelyn Harrington and Ryan Caldwell became the most talked-about events in Briarwood Heights history. What began as whispers of infidelity had spiraled into a story of betrayal, obsession, and murder that captivated not just the town, but the entire nation. Journalists flocked to the courthouse, eager to capture every tearful testimony, every chilling revelation, and every twist in the case that had gripped the public's imagination. Ryan Caldwell's trial was the first to unfold. Prosecutors painted him as a man consumed by obsession, willing to cross any boundary to claim Evelyn as his own. The hidden camera footage from the Harrington Library was the cornerstone of their case, showing Ryan delivering the fatal blow to Michael Harrington. Combined with the surveillance footage of Ryan purchasing gloves and duct tape, as well as his increasingly erratic messages to Evelyn, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Ryan's defense argued that he had acted under Evelyn's influence, portraying her as a manipulative woman who had weaponized his feelings to rid herself of her husband. "She told me he was the problem," Ryan testified, his voice cracking with emotion. "She said she wanted freedom, and I believed her." But the jury was unmoved. The footage of Ryan's actions, the premeditation implied by his purchases, and his own inability to provide a solid alibi sealed his fate. After only 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict. Ryan Caldwell was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, his obsession costing him not only his freedom but any chance of reclaiming his former life. Evelyn's trial came next, and it was far more complex. While she had not physically committed the murder, her words, actions, and decisions were scrutinized in painstaking detail. The prosecution argued that Evelyn's affair and her messages to Ryan had created the conditions for Michael's murder. Emails and texts were presented as evidence of her complicity, particularly the messages where she lamented feeling trapped and wrote, "I just want it all to stop." Evelyn's defense focused on her emotional state, portraying her as a vulnerable woman who had been seduced and manipulated by Ryan. Her attorney argued that she had never explicitly asked Ryan to harm Michael and that her messages were expressions of frustration, not instructions for murder. Evelyn herself took the stand, her voice breaking as she recounted her feelings of isolation and despair. "I never wanted this," she told the court, tears streaming down her face. "I thought he understood that." The jury deliberated for 2 days, torn between sympathy for Evelyn's emotional turmoil and the undeniable impact of her choices. In the end, they found her guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, acknowledging her role in setting the events in motion even if she hadn't wielded the weapon herself. Evelyn was sentenced to 25 years in prison, a punishment that reflected both her culpability and the complexity of her actions. With the trials concluded, Briarwood Heights was left to grapple with the aftermath. The Harrington children, Ethan and Claire, became the reluctant symbols of resilience, thrust into the public eye as they tried to rebuild their lives without their parents. Neighbors and friends struggled to reconcile the image of the perfect Harrington family with the dark reality that had emerged. The house that once stood as a beacon of success and stability became a grim reminder of the secrets that could fester behind closed doors. Evelyn's imprisonment was marked by reflection and regret. She spent her days writing letters to Ethan and Claire, desperate to explain herself, though she knew no words could undo the pain she had caused. From her cell, she often thought about the moments that had led to her downfall, moments of weakness, of selfishness, of failing to see the danger in Ryan's growing obsession. In the quiet hours of the night, she wondered if she could have stopped it all, if she had simply walked away when she had the chance. The story of Michael, Evelyn, and Ryan became a cautionary tale, not just for Briarwood Heights but for everyone who followed it. It was a reminder of how small decisions, an innocent conversation, a fleeting desire, could snowball into catastrophic consequences. It showed how unchecked emotions like obsession and resentment could drive people to unimaginable acts. And it underscored the importance of honesty in communication in relationships, as well as the dangers of seeking escape at the expense of others. Despite the court's decisions, not everyone was satisfied with the conclusions. Some believed Evelyn's punishment was too lenient, arguing that she had manipulated Ryan into killing her husband. Others saw her as a victim of circumstance, a woman who had made poor choices but didn't deserve to pay such a heavy price. And then there were those who wondered about Ryan, whether he had truly acted out of love, or if his actions were driven by a darkness that was already within him. Even years later, the case remained a source of debate and fascination. Documentaries were made, books were written, and true crime enthusiasts dissected every detail. But no matter how much was said or written, the answers to the most profound questions, why it happened, and whether it could have been stopped, remained elusive. As we close the book on this harrowing tale, we want to hear from you. Do you believe Evelyn Harrington deserved her sentence, or was she unfairly punished for Ryan's actions? Was Ryan Caldwell a victim of manipulation, or was he always capable of such violence? Could Michael Harrington have prevented his own death if he had approached Evelyn differently? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that uncover the shadows behind seemingly perfect lives. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our next gripping tale of love, betrayal, and the dark paths they can lead us down.